welcome back. It's now time to talk about this very, what do you call it, controversial issue of Nigeria Coast Guard bill. It's not it's not the first time this bill has been proposed, and time and again we see this bill coming up, and we have debate over whether it's necessary or not, whether it's just duplicating the role of the Navy. The Navy apparently most of the time opposes this to say, look, we're already doing the work. Why get a Coast Guard? But the people who are pushing for this said, we need to complement your work. This is more like the security arm of whatever it is you're doing and all of that. So it's a debate that has been ongoing, and it is actually at the National Assembly, and that has generated a lot of talking points. So we're joined in the program by two gentlemen who are for and against this bill. We're first joined right here in our Lagos studio by Professor Alfred Oniye. He's a Dean of Faculty, City University, Cambodia and West Africa, and also an anti-piracy and security head at the Trident Group America Incorporated. Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you, my brother.
We also have Rear Admiral Christian Ezekobe, is retired, a former Chief of Policy and Plans of the Nigerian Army. Rear Admiral, thank you so much for coming on the program. Oh dear. Okay, as soon as we get the Rear Admirals, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can.
All right, so let me begin with the studio first off. For the people driving this conversation, let me start with you, Professor Nie, on this particular one. The Navy, without making a case for them, I'd listened to one Rear Admiral as well before now. He said, look, the Navy has structure and functions in three parts. The first is defense. Time of war, they come out to defend the country, the territorial integrity of the country. They also have the diplomatic part, when they use all these gunboats and all of that. They also have the police arm, which they say is the Coast Guard element. So bringing a Coast Guard is like duplicating what they already cover. So when you hear this kind of argument, how do you push back?
Thank you very much. I will try to be a little bit, come to everybody's level, so that the layman can understand. I will bring to the table the practical maritime, not the maritime we read online. At least I sailed this water before joining the America and before joining the Cambodia. Now listen, we are not duplicating the Navy. The Navy is stretched and overstretched already. Now, we have the territorial water, we have the inland water, and we have the coastline. The coastline is the backwater. So this coastline is 853 coastline. That's what we have in Nigeria. And I can tell you over 98% of that coastline lack a security presence. Then, two, we have what we call roughly 10,000 navigable waterways. You know what I call water channels. And the Navy puts together, I'm sure they cannot even cover 2,000 of it. They are stretched inland water. Now, keep stretching the Navy, the defense will suffer. And we're saying, you know what? If this is what we have been doing for long, and we are not getting the real result we should be getting, let's have a change of structure. Let's have a change of policy. They are not doing the work of the Navy. We are just trying to put in place the international best practice. Nobody is doing the work of Navy here. And what we are trying to set up is the Civilian Enforcement Agency, who will focus majorly on search and rescue. These are specialized fleet. We focus on enforcement of safety law. You and I know how many times boats keep capsizing in these waterways. Who enforce those safety laws? These are strictly civilians' job. You can't use military to do it. You can't. Of recent, there's a project coming up, I think it's already on, and they call it the coastal road. This coastal road, when it is opened, it will attract more commercial activities. Who takes care of those coastlines there? Who takes care of our maritime tourist center? This is the job of coastline. You cannot militarize your maritime zone. It will scare investors away. And one of the things the investors keep hammering on outside is, you know what? go and put your house in order. We want to be sure that our investment is safe at your backwater. And this is the main reason why the ministry is coming up to say, you know what, I think it's time for us to have this Coast Guard. See, if the same policy we have been applying for years is not giving us the appropriate result we want, there's room for change.
Yeah, I'm going to come to the Rear Admiral to respond to some of the things you have said.
Yeah.
But just to piggyback on what you said, the little one we have had with Tantita and the Navy, you know how things play out. So there's also the question of cohesion and coordination at the end of the day.
It cannot be. Let me put it this way. When we talk about maritime, we are talking about what happened at sea and what happened around the sea. We are still discussing what happened on the sea. We've not even mentioned what happened under the sea. We've not even mentioned what happened above the sea. There are so many discoveries coming out when it comes to academic research paper. Now the question is, there can be a coalition and there can be a duplication of services. Because the Navy will focus on the territory, focus on the territorial sea, which is the defense. And what is their job? To protect Nigeria from external aggression, both on the sea, above the sea, and under the sea. Yes, I think what we should be thinking of is how to invest more in our Navy to be more advanced and level up with our foreign counterparts. Not by withdrawing our Navy to come and be doing Boy Scout job. To me, that is...
Well, the Navy man will respond to this. Rear Admiral, maybe this is the time for you to weigh in on why the Navy is not comfortable with this idea. We've been on this for a long time. This is not a new conversation.
Thank you very much, Jeffrey, for having me on your show. Good morning, Nigerians. I'm just going to make my interventions in three areas. I'm going to speak to the roles and functions of the Navy, the requirements for setting up a fleet, and then perhaps if there's time, I'd like to talk about the bill itself. So in talking about the roles and functions of the Navy,
it appears as if we're having challenges with audio through to retired Eziobi. We'll try to return to him. But as we come back to the studio now, while we wait for that to be rectified, Professor Oni, I saw how you speak with passion about the need for this. And, you know, the Navy has been vigorously opposed to this, and you know there's also been that talk that this is not new, that we've been at this since 1970, and in fact during the Constitutional Conference this was stamped down as needless, you know, and particularly with reports that Nigeria is trying to cut down on government's wage bill, because if this is established it will add to you know, government's expenditure. And you say that, you know, it's not a duplication of responsibility, but the act establishing the armed forces itself also covers that the Navy is charged with the responsibility of manning the backwaters and also front waters, if that is the expression that it is used to describe it. So is it not replication, as is being talked about, and wouldn't this add to government expenditure, which we do not need and cannot afford at this time?
According to you, let me put it this way. The law is made by men, for men, and to make life comfortable for men. If the same law is not making life comfortable for you, you have a right to amend the same law. You see, for the fact that this is how we have been doing it doesn't make it right if nobody is talking. And the truth is, we have been following the same channel for how many years, and we are not getting the same result. We're not getting a result. 10,000 navigable channels. Even Navy, in their 60 years of existence, they could not even cover 500. So what happened at our defense? I'm still talking about the inland water. I'm not even talking about the coastline. There are some places you will get to around our coastline. You will ask yourself, do we really have NEMASA, NPA, NIWA, or is there any ministry called Ministry of Marine and Blue Economy? In fact, you will ask yourself, is this place part of Nigeria? And He said the backwater has turned to the harbors for criminals. When these guys finish at sea, they come back to the backwater, and those communities will be where they hide. So the Navy is stretched already. We need more of their presence at the defense.
But even if the Navy is stretched, the NPA has its own domain awareness system. NIMASA has its own maritime domain awareness. Even Customs has created its own. And we hear reports that the NSCDC now has its own maritime service. So shouldn't these institutions be strengthened to collaborate with the Navy to man the backwaters that you're talking about, rather than create an entirely new institution that comes with more responsibilities?
They are not trained for that. Coast Guard is a special force on its own. You cannot do what you are not training for. For example, I'm a trained and certified search and rescue expert. And one of the things I understand about search and rescue is when you are not trained for it, you are not trained for it. You can't know it.
Are you saying that the Navy is not trained for search and rescue?
It is not their job. This is not a military job. It's a strictly civilian enforcement job.
We'll come back to, we have a lot of questions to piggyback from what you're saying. Let's go back to the Rear Admiral. Rear Admiral, I know you have a lot to say, so let's give you the floor now.
Okay, thank you, Jeffrey, and good morning, Nigerians. I was saying that I would make my intervention in 3 areas: the roles and functions of the Navy, what it requires to establish a fleet, and perhaps, if there's time, go into the bill itself. I like to say that there are categories of navies. You have blue water navies, you have green water navies, and brown water navies. What that tells you by extension is that some navies are global, like the US Navy, that, you know, prepositions itself across the world, in all the oceans of the world, the Indian Ocean, and so on and so forth. For such a navy, yes, a Coast Guard is of a necessity to police the home waters for them. But for other countries, come back to the continent, South Africa, we have a navy only. There's no Coast Guard. This is for economy of effort and utilization of funds for optimal purposes. The acquisition of platforms is a very cost-intensive endeavor. So you need to be wary about what you say. I hear discussions around the Navy being overstretched, you know, and all that. That's not correct. The Navy is not overstretched. Rather, what we need are the required platforms and infrastructure to work optimally in the maritime space that is available to us. So it will be a duplication for us to have a Coast Guard coming at this time that we are looking for more platforms. We are looking for offshore patrol vessels. A vessel of that nature costs between about $90 million to $150 million. Why do we need another agency to come to that space and begin to contest for funds that are ill available to us in our national history at this time? These are the issues. Because when you say a Coast Guard, yes, if there is an unlimited source of funding available to the country, why not? But we are talking about a country that is in its dearest times in terms of economic strength. So we need to be circumspect about what we want to do. And then I hear this issue of us being around for about 60 years. Yes, we've been around in 68 years. What have we done in 68 years? We have developed dockyards and repair facilities. Because when you have a maritime platform, you must have dockyards and repair facilities to cater for these platforms. Otherwise, they'll go to waste. In fact, several platforms have been acquired by NIMASA that have been run down. These are factual, you know, facts. You also need forward operating bases. Most of our bases are 50 to 60 nautical miles in the hinterland. You need to reduce this transit time so that the vessels are readily available at sea. And then they are supported by way of logistics, fueling, and other resources to increase the time on task out there.
Oh dear.
So many questions to follow up with retired General Ezeubi, and some of which I hope he'll be back in the short term rather than the long term. Some of which would be his Rear Admiral, his response to what Professor Eniye is saying, that over the 60 years of existence of the Nigerian Navy, why has it been unable to cover even 500 nautical miles of the expansive coastline that we have? And in addition to that, from this end, there's a lot of concern about the huge quantum of crude oil theft that is ongoing under the watch, supposedly, of the Nigerian Navy. Why has it been unable to rein in on that and help to shore up Nigeria's revenue from crude oil? And there's also that concern about, thousands of, vessels on the territorial waters of the country that are unmanned. So, Rear Admiral, if you're back, those are the concerns that we want you to respond to. I hope you got that. We hear that he's back.
I got you from the time you spoke about crude oil theft.
Yes.
So, Bukola, please, and this is for Nigerians to note. In some climes, in most climes where there's a vibrant oil industry, the pipelines are controlled by the Ministry of Transport. Why are they controlled by the Ministry of Transport? You produce a commodity. You move it from point A to point B. You are not worried about the security of this commodity. You don't even know when there's a breach in the flow of the commodity that you're pumping. So that's one error. The second error is that when you begin to look at the quantum of oil theft that we talk about, and I've said this in several fora, NNPC needs to come clean to the table. It needs to come and tell us who and what are the measures put in place at the lifting points where these super tankers pick up our products. Because if you look at the total quantity of crude that is being banded, has been stolen, it's marginal. The real theft occurs out there at sea by way of topping. And these are the issues we may discuss at some other time, because we pay lip service to the security of that one product that makes our nation great. So please, we have done our best in that space. I don't want to stand in the gap and say there are no breaches or errors, but basically, when it comes to oil theft, we need to get a matrix. We need to do an audit of the industry itself and all the players therein, so that when you want to apportion blame, the blame will be apportioned in the right direction.
Right, Mira, we'll come back to you to speak to the merits or demerits of the bill that you wanted to speak to, but let's bring it back to Prof. I know that in terms of kilometers, we're covering almost 900 kilometers of coastline from Lagos to Calabar, covering about 9 states, the whole south, and they have Ogun, Lagos, and Ondo, all of this across that line.
10,000, right?
Yeah, just about, kilometers now.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, we're talking about the Atlantic and somewhere around the Gulf of Guinea and all of these elements you've talked about. So my question to you is... So
when you call it kilometers, we call it navigable channels.
I'm saying the ones that everybody can relate to. You can give your technical...
So it's closely 10,000.
Yes. So at the end of the day, where I'm going to with this is, part of the reason why you have to make a case, because the Rear Admiral has made a case, we have made a case as to the issue of paucity of funds to now begin to set up institutions. And what are the losses, quantifiable, verifiable, empirical data you have in terms of losses that we've recorded for not having a Coast Guard that necessitates getting a Coast Guard? Have you done that research yourself?
I didn't want to shift blame on this interview, because if some of us have to talk, we will shake the table. We saw this water back to back. Okay? And the Rear Admiral know what he's saying, he know what he's talking about. We know what leave this country, we know what leave this country almost every day. We don't want to talk about it. If the Old Testament is not faulty, there won't be room for New Testament. And I told you, I'm not going to be talking about the maritime you read online. We're practical here. And that's why I said, if we have closely 10,000 to 10,000 kilometers, just say, navigable channels, and the Navy could only cover 500, what happens to about 9,500? Who's monitored it? Do you know what happens in those creeks? Do you know what happens in those channels? If we tell you we have over 853 coastlines, and the Navy cannot tell you they have actually covered up to 100, then what happened to the remaining 700? You know what happens there? We don't want to shibble because some of us will search a lot and we investigate a lot. So we know what happened. It's our system. So what I'm trying to bring out is,
Sorry, Prof. This is public.
Yeah.
You're in a public arena.
Yeah.
I'm not saying call names or anything, but if you're going to make a case, the case here is, without trying to side with anybody, the case, I want you to hear the merit of the argument. The merit of the argument, Prof, just hold on. The merit of the argument is, we are struggling as a country. Yeah. We do not have so much money. Yeah. But you are coming to tell us that for not having a Coast Guard, we're losing this amount of money that we can make. What are we losing is my question.
I can categorically tell that what Nigeria is losing presently in this water is over $100 billion yearly. And I can give you breakdown on that.
Is that empirical data
I'm
to
telling
prove
you
that?
I know what I'm saying. And you see, maritime is Nigeria. Let me just be frank with you this morning. Maritime is Nigeria's CBN. This country is too blessed to be broke. We shouldn't be borrowing. If that maritime is well taken care of. Now we have a president that is giving more attention to that place. And I can tell you, the president can be in that office 40 years, he will not know what is happening in that water. And I know that there are so many forces why they are against this Coast Guard. Coast Guard is going to be the eye of the president, the eye of the minister. Because Coast Guard will dig out so many things that are not even known to the public. And that's the truth. We are not trying, I'm not come here to fight anything.
Who are you referring to that is against the establishment of this Coast Guard that will reveal a lot of things?
Whosoever is against this bill should tell us what he knows and why he's against. Because this bill is not going to stop the Navy salary. It's not going to stop the allocation. In fact, it does not even need more of government funding. The ministry is saying, I have the fund. Nemasa said, I will give you 2% of my revenue. NPA says, I will give you 1% of my revenue. And we have foreign aid coming in to support the bill. Then why are you so bothered? But this thing is like, it's taking burden completely away from the government. Now, let's come to the employment stage now. What is the baseline for insecurity in this water? Unemployment. In this country, we have over 80% trained Nigerian seafarers that are jobless. If you look at the strategy of operation of this criminal in this water, you know that they are not just babies, they are experts. Now, you can't train people to be more professionals and they don't have a job. And I was saying, what? Let's use the unemployed seafarers to set up a Coast Guard.
Rear Admiral Ezekobe is raring to respond to those things that you've just said. Yes. But before he does that, the bill seeks to establish the Coast Guard as a military service and a branch of the armed forces. The armed forces, the Navy already has the Marine Police, as Jeffrey has highlighted already. But shouldn't a conversation on the establishment of a national Coast Guard within the armed forces be championed by the armed forces itself and not a private individual? Which some would say is highlighting a disconnect in policy formulation. Why is a private individual advocating the establishment of a Coast Guard under the armed forces?
What makes you think the government is not fully involved? Or what makes you think the president is not fully involved? What makes you think the minister is not involved? Because this bill is actually was presented to the House by the Ministry of Marine and Blue Economy themselves. And are you trying to say the distinguished Senate leaders don't know what they are doing? Now the point, I'm coming.
Prof, sorry, I don't try to cut you. I just want us to understand what we're saying. We're going to go to the Rear Admiral. If that bill is going to establish an arm,
yes,
I want you to look at the choice of words.
That's where I'm going.
Pardon me, Jeffrey's point is important because it's a specialized field which the Navy withholds the expertise, the knowledge for the establishment. So shouldn't it be the armed forces, the Navy in specificity now, that should be championing the establishment of the National Coast Guard?
This Navy, because the Navy are not Coast Guard and they are not trained for Coast Guard job. Navy are military entity on their own. They are fighting They are fighting force.
Right.
Their job is to protect the country from external aggression.
But there's a component of the Navy's function
that's why I said they are
that confers it the responsibility of training seafarers as well.
That's why I said they are stretched. It's normal when an environment is vulnerable and you have an existing security agency. You can say, you know what, take care of this particular environment for now. And we have seen that for the past more than 50 years they have been doing it. We are not getting results. I say, you know what? Let's complement your effort. Now let me bring it out a bit.
All right, Prof, in 1 minute so that we can get to the right. He's been waiting.
Before him, let me analyze this. What he said that it should have been the job of the armed forces to come up with the bill. Come on, it. Does your employer need to seek your consent before he restructure or take up a policy that will suit his own environment?
All right, let's take it to Rear Admiral. Rear Admiral, I want you to, he said a lot of things. We've talked about how it is presented. You say you speak to some of the merits of the bill, because I also know part of the bill looks like when there's no wartime, it's under marine economy. When it's wartime, they shift them to the Ministry of Defense. I want you to speak to their entirety and respond to some of the things he's raised as well. Rear Admiral.
Jeffrey.
Go ahead, sir. Oh, dear. Oh, dear.
Okay, we hope that you will return very soon, just like the last time. But land on some of the things that you were saying.
The point is,
I think it's back.
Okay, it's back now.
Please go ahead, sir.
Please just give me some time.
We really want to give the Rear Admiral some time. That's the truth. I want to give him like 3-4 minutes to land on all of his thoughts, because you've raised a lot of issues that he's been waiting and itching to respond to. Rear Admiral, if you're back, please go ahead. We're having network connections, connection issues with you.
Even if we, for all intents and purposes, were to establish a Coast Guard, it is not going to come to fruition in the next perhaps 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. Because you are going to look at platform acquisitions. You are going to look at bases. You are going to look at infrastructure. You are going to look at personnel training. You are going to look at a host of ancillary issues, which are cost dependent and time dependent. So anybody who is even talking about a Coast Guard is not going to come through in this administration, neither is it going to come through in the next administration. I think this is something we must get straight. Now, going to the bill itself, for want of a better word, I want to say not good. That's the summary of the bill. The bill proposes to place this Coast Guard under a board. It, intends to put it under the Ministry of Marine and Blue Economy, and in some sweep, perhaps under the Ministry of Defense. So even the location of the ministry is an issue. The other issues arising from the bill are, like your guest mentioned, the funding. When you say 2% of NIMASA funds, what is 2% of NIMASA funds? When you say 1% of MPA funds, what is 1% of MPA funds? Are the funds not supposed to go to the Treasury single account? What we know as funding any agency in this country is appropriation by the National Assembly. But if you go through that bill, it mentions gifts, grants, aids, and so on. So it's a recipe for financial misappropriation in the beginning. There are other issues of the bill. It has a board that has about 22 members. It speaks to about 5 or 6 ministers being on that board or their representatives, and then a retired naval officer chairing the board. I wonder how a retired naval officer is going to chair a board where the sitting CNS is with about 6 ministers. I think the bill in its construction and entirety is a poor job. I think that's the summary of what one needs to say about the bill. There are other issues of the bill that have to do with the functions and the responsibilities of the Marshal Commandant, which are very poorly spelled out. Sometimes he seems to be like a figurehead who has no direct responsibility. There are issues where we're talking about the board, where a board member is absent, and then it says you go to the Coast Guard to nominate an officer to represent that member of the board that is absent, akin to having a police service commission. When a member is absent, you go to the police and nominate a police officer to come and sit on the board. So it is a bill that was poorly crafted and put together. It needs to be rejigged, and in my own mind, totally unnecessary. It's something that should, be shredded and put away. I wish that we were all having a copy of the bill and we could go through it page by page so that I point out the nitty-gritties and the errors. The rank structure of the Coast Guard is completely the same with that of the Navy. So from the onset, you are putting a recipe for conflict and confusion. Why should that be? The Orasanyan report is clear. There's no need for duplication of functions. In that bill, the Coast Guard seeks to do the job of the Navy, the Customs, perhaps the Immigration, NOSDRA, the Maritime Academy, ORON, the current National Hydrographic Agency. It's just running all over the place. This is not good for our history. We need to be a more organized society at this point in our nation's history. The president, I give him kudos for creating this ministry, but I believe this was not the intent of Mr. President. Because if you take away oil and gas and you take away fisheries, every other thing in that space is left for the marine and blue economy. It's just for everybody to put on their thinking caps, map out a robust strategic plan that will get us the required dividends of the creation of this ministry, not to go and create a Coast Guard from nowhere. I think this is going to drain our national funds, stifle the funds that are coming to the Navy as it were today, and it is totally unnecessary. I mean, I speak as a Nigerian, and I want to say that everybody in Nigeria can be a patriot. All you need to do is to have the strength of character, the sincerity of purpose, and the necessary competence to execute what you want to do. And that is lacking in this bill.
Rear Admiral, I'd like you to respond to some specific things that Professor Iniye has also said. He said earlier on that those who are opposed to this bill are not forthcoming about the real reasons that they're opposed to it, that a National Coast Guard will work to the effect that it will reveal some of the things that are happening on the waterways, that those who are opposed to it, not quoting him copiously now, do not want to be revealed. I'd like you to respond to that, sir.
Bukola, I am opposed to the bill as an individual. I have nothing to hide. And I've served this country in a capacity as a senior naval officer, as an officer for 33 years. In those 33 years, I've never been found wanting. I have commanded the forward operations base in Escravos. And I know that we were in the trenches fighting Tompolo and all those who are currently claiming to be Tantita. So let's not go there. If you go there, we will just be talking in circles. The Navy is an established entity by the Constitution of this country. If you are trying to run it down, please look for a more creative way to run down the Navy. There is nothing that is shrouded in secrecy. The Navy is very transparent. Where we err ourselves, we bring in our in-house mechanism to discipline our own. And that has happened variously. So if there's something else, your guest in the studio should please say it. We're on national TV. There's nothing to hide. The country is ours.
All right, we have just 1 minute. So just if you can wrap it up in 1 minute in response.
Basically,
so we wrap up
all he has raised has been taken care of. I don't want to believe you walk onto perfection overnight. All the mistakes you point out from that bill, I've gone through it myself, and I want to believe there can always be an adjustment. I don't want to exchange word with him, but the fact is the financial aspect of this agency has been taken care of. And it will not stop Navy allocation. It will reduce the Navy funding. So my point is, Coast Guard is a necessity to complement the Navy and to beef up the security of our inland water to enforce the maritime regulations, search and rescue, safety regulation, and the marine pollution.
Well,
that's all we need. I'm
happy. This is going to be an interesting debate, and for the record, this is not the first time. Exactly. So it keeps coming out time and again. Professor Alfred Oniye, Dean of Faculty, City University, Cambodia and West Africa, also Anti-Piracy and Security Head of Trident Group America Incorporated, joining us from our Lagos studio. Also, Rear Admiral Christian Ezekobe, retired, served the Navy for 33 years. I'm happy you gave us that information. I didn't know that before. Thank you for your service, by the way, sir. Former Chief for Policy and Plans of the Nigerian Navy. Thank you, sir, for coming on the program. All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, the softer side of things we'll get to the guy who is blazing the trail in Calabar is a comedian. Last Prophet is his name. He joins us after this break. Join us again.